In the heart of Tokyo, a bunch of people on a train are in for one wild ride. Their train isn't just zipping through the usual tracks, it's doing a time and space somersault, landing them thousands of years in the future. These regular commuters are thrown into a world they never saw coming. They are in an all-out brawl for their lives. Every twist and turn throws a fresh curveball, a new danger. To make it through this crazy Tokyo apocalypse, these survivors need to fight hard and figure out a solution, a way back in the present time, fast. A young woman holding a baby rushes to catch a train. She reflects on her loved ones and the unpredictable nature of life. Next, 3 individuals cross paths, each going their separate ways. The woman, no longer carrying the baby, stands behind a man she recognizes as they all board train car 5. On the train, various passengers share their thoughts, some kinder than others. Suddenly, an earthquake alert disrupts everything. Items and people vanish, network connections fail, and the train speeds ahead, knocking standing passengers to the ground. When everybody wakes up, one person checks on the hurt people. Others open the doors, and in a rush, people leave the train and find themselves in a new, strange place. Teacher Hitano, firefighter Shirahama, and hairdresser Kayashima decide to walk through the tunnel to get help. Back at the train station, the conductor realizes a train car is missing and goes into the tunnel to check. They reach the end without meeting. The lost train car isn't on the tracks. Meanwhile, the 3 volunteers find a huge space. Back on the train, scientist Kato is confused by what they saw. It sounds impossible. Gaming student Yonezawa, though, has a few ideas. Maybe a missile hit and they're the last survivors, shielded by the tunnel. Or perhaps they crashed, died, and are now waiting for reincarnation in a kind of mass hypnosis. His third thought is that they've ended up in a parallel world. Shirahama shifts to practical matters, making a list of passengers and starting a fire for smoke signals. Kayashima plans his walking route to get out of there, but Shirahama convinces him to wait. Everyone stays on the train, waiting for help, feeling bored and hot. Rina notices a newspaper story about a murder suspect near the train. She digs through a bag on the floor, finds a letter from prison, quickly puts it back, and takes something from someone else's bag. As she glides by, she sticks Kayashima with it. When Hitano realizes her bag is gone, Rina blames Kayashima, mentioning his prison letter and a weapon, making everyone suspicious. Kayashima thanks everyone, pointing out the lack of trust, and gives himself a reason to leave. While walking, he finds a case of water bottles. As the group splits their supplies, Yonezawa notices in the background of his video that Rina took the bag. To divert attention, she starts talking about how nobody is looking for them anyway, affecting everyone's mood. Shirahama and Hitano go after innocent Kayashima, but he keeps moving, taking a bottle with him. Eventually, he finds a hard-to-spot ravine and sliding off, he's hanging by a hand. Just in time, Shirahama appears to pull him up. Taking a break, Hitano notices a school bag over the cliff's edge, remembering some passengers who left the train but didn't return. They apologize to Kayashima for the misunderstanding, but he brushes it off, saying he doesn't see them becoming friends. The next day, Tanaka grumbles with a toothache while others discuss what to do next. In the background, Tanaka tries to buy a water bottle from the high schoolers, but they leave, aiming for freedom. Suddenly, it hits Tanaka if he doesn't have to go home, he's free. Off he goes, shouting as he departs. The idea catches on, and disorganized groups set out to forage or explore on their own. Shirahama, driven by a past failure to save a colleague in a fire, is desperate to save as many people as possible. However, Kayashima brings him back to reality with a dose of truth. Together, they pursue the students, and Kayashima is suddenly reminded of the much younger brother he raised, now in prison. At home, Tatsuya is released to find his brother missing, not what he expected. Meanwhile, Kayashima is stuck and filled with inner turmoil for not being there to welcome him, blaming himself for everything. On their way back, high schooler Kazuma discovers a discarded can from a product not available yet. Tanaka spots a building not supposed to be completed until 2026. Kato realizes he's found a plant that shouldn't have been scientifically generated for another 30 years. Yonezawa is the only one excited about the prospect of sci-fi coming to life. But Kayashima questions, what does it matter? They're stuck regardless. In the present world, the news reports on missing passengers. Meanwhile, in Car 5, they discover a drinks vendor who got lost wandering in the forest and lost his cart of drinks. Someone stole it. And once again, suspicions arise. Shirahama shares something he learned in the Fire Academy. According to Heinrich's law, there are 29 small incidents and 300 telltale signs before a serious accident. In their current situation, there's no water, food, or way to communicate. They're in a world that's stuck in a kind of waiting state. Back on the train, everyone feels sad and starts blaming each other for the missing drink cases. Yonezawa thinks Rina is responsible, and Hitano suggests it might be the people who didn't come back. Accusations get worse, reaching a point where Kayashima says he's seen it. However, he wonders if he can trust everyone to share things fairly. He goes out to find the bottles, but they're not where he saw them before. They're gone, he says. Meanwhile, the others gathered their snacks, but it was not enough to last even a day. Shirahama sets up a tarp to catch rainwater, hoping to get some dew. 2 days pass, and they urgently need water. To pass the time, he and Hatano talk about the things they miss. Shirahama promises to take her to his favorite restaurant when they get back. The next morning, a group searches for water sources, walking as far as they can. Those left behind argue at first but later cooperate to create shared sleeping areas, bringing some peace and a sense of order to all. As the group searching for supplies finds water, Tanaka, who just pulled out his hurting tooth, heads for the stash of water bottles. But the conductor catches him. Now revealed, Tanaka comes back with a case of water ready to trade. As things get tense, Kayashima grabs Tanaka, threatening him with scissors. Shirahama insists on talking without violence, so Kayashima lets everyone decide to keep Tanaka or throw him off the train. Hatano decides to keep him. The next day, they return to the water site, prepared to climb a mountain to get to it. They cheer as Shirahama reaches a small pool, but he goes a bit further and sees the sea and Mount Fuji in the distance. However, it's not the landscape he expected. Maybe they are decades or even centuries in the future. In the present world, the station sets up a place to answer families' questions, but they have no answers. On the train, everyone feels really sad in their own way. And like a sign of doom, people notice their phones are dying too. Yonezawa creates a final message for his friends, but sadly, it doesn't get posted. Others leave last messages for loved ones on their phones or through email, but those messages stay stuck on their devices. Hatano brings Kayashima a flower, claiming it's for his girlfriend's death anniversary, but it was one of the many lies he told. He finally admits today is his younger brother's prison release date. When she tries to make a message for his brother, he calls her an idiot. Unfortunately, her phone dies in the process, marking her last chance to leave a message for loved ones. Somehow, she thinks that Kayashima is actually secretly kind. Taking a moment alone, Shirahama looks again at the signs before a disaster, only understanding them later. He thinks there's a reason he survived a previous fire accident. In the present, the disaster team hears about the missing people from Car 5 and Car 6. Sadly, they have no leads. As everyone gets ready for the night, Tanaka is in the woods singing loudly until something hits him on the head. He looks up, briefly distracted by an aurora. Then he turns to see something flying straight toward him. Tanaka runs after some unknown people while everyone else is sleeping on the train. Except for Kayashima, he's replaying his brother's arrest in his head while his brother wonders where on earth he is. Tanaka comes back to the train, shouting about the other people and getting everyone worked up. As tensions rise, it suddenly starts to rain, bringing relief as they collect and enjoy the water. Kato points out they don't know what's in the rainwater, but that doesn't stop anyone from joyfully splashing. Inside the train, Terasaki sits this one out, thinking about her daughter and feeling sad that they'll never get back. She continues to feel down as the rest decide on schedules and water usage. Next comes food. Kayashima loses it during the discussion, telling everyone they'll have to work to eat and not just rely on a few. Kayashima reflects on the tough times when he had to fight for everything, taking his brother away from their abusive father. Despite all his efforts, his brother ended up in juvenile prison without lifting a finger in return. Meanwhile, the foraging team, led by Kato, identifies edible plants. They discuss what's happening in the rest of the world, trying to understand the events that unfolded. Back at the site, everyone is working to build things, figuring out solutions, while others search for drinkable water. Shirahama credits Kayashima with motivating everyone to take action instead of sitting idly, and it has restored their energy. Between foraging, water retrieval, and crafting plates and cups, everyone has something to do. They cheerfully dine together until panic sets in when someone spots a poisonous berry in the mix. Kayashima thinks Tanaka may have slipped it in when he was lurking earlier. Shirahama goes after Tanaka to check but insists there's no reason to distrust him. Settling in for the night, Hatano encourages Terasaki to have a bite, but she can't think of a reason to carry on if her family is already gone. The whispered conversation brings the earlier happy mood even lower. Others start to talk about where they would have been if they hadn't been on the train that day. Kato feels relieved that he won't have to repay his enormous loan, finally making Terasaki chuckle. They decide they have to try to get back. The Chinese tourists find their moment, presenting a box of sweets and eliciting genuine smiles. Hatano is worried that Shirahama hasn't returned, but Kayashima tells her to wait or she'll just get hurt and cause more trouble. He teases her, calling her a Shirahama fan, which she unsuccessfully tries to deny. Eventually, she shares her story and how she knows Shirahama. Meanwhile, Shirahama has fallen, hurting his leg. The next morning, Hatano is determined to find Shirahama, and Kayashima can't help but get involved. Before they get far, Shirahama limps back. He manages to find Kayashima's scissors set, but instead of being grateful, in his general anger, he turns on Shirahama. However, Shirahama sees through it all, realizing that he's not angry at him or even his brother, but at himself for how things turned out. At home, Tatsuya just misses his older brother. Meanwhile, Kayashima breaks down in tears. Shirahama has more news apart from finding the scissors. He confirms to the whole group that the earth was damp where he'd fallen, so there could be a river. And maybe fish. Everyone cheers and starts to suggest ideas for the next steps. In the train station, investigators identified a stabbing suspect who boarded the train. Meanwhile, as Shirahama, Kayashima, and Kato search for a river, Kato is suddenly stabbed by someone who runs off into the woods. Shirahama and Kayashima rush, but it's not a pleasant sight. Terasaki decides to patrol on her own, now obsessed with protecting the place she couldn't wait to leave. In Car 5, they struggle to figure out how to help Kato with few supplies and no expertise. Kayashima gathers the courage to attempt stitching him up with a sewing kit. Kato passes out, accompanied by a backstory of how he feigned interest in plants when he had no friends. He grew older with similar results, and eventually his girlfriend left too. As Kato's condition worsens, Yonezawa pages through his research, searching for plants with healing qualities. He works determinedly to find something while Kato, in an infection-led fever, dreams of his grandfather who's always supported him. Kayashima worries over Kato's infection as he had pushed ahead with the surgery, and Kato has dreams of deceased relatives but eventually wakes from his fevered dreams. A tearful Yonezawa welcomes him back, relieved to see him alive. Now relieved, Yonezawa wonders who would have stabbed Kato in the first place. Are there others here besides them? Kato thanked everyone for their help, especially Shirahama who had carried him. Kayashima notes he should be thanking Yonezawa who's figured out how to fight the infection. But no one mentions that Kayashima actually did the stitching. In all the commotion, Shirahama is reminded of the colleague he injured with his carelessness. As he seeks a moment of peace, dragging himself along, he can't help but recall his failures. Tanaka, in his completely mad and mocking state, points out Shirahama's predicament, a leader who is scared to lead. Tanaka also notes that since Roman times, people have been using trenches as a means of defense. Shirahama brings him back to camp, but Kayashima is livid, seeing him as the enemy who may have tried to poison them. It turns out Tanaka worked for a security firm, and that's just what Car 5 could use right now. Tanaka lectures on the things they should be noticing, like broken locks or windows. The things that happen early on, like missing laundry or daily items, are what they should be mindful of and note to each other. And they should set traps. He shows them how. Everyone starts working, and the kids test their trap on Kayashima. He plays along with them, pretending to attack, and the others enjoy seeing his playful side. While everyone is busy, Rina does her nails and worries about her dry hair ends. She convinces Kayashima to give her a free haircut. Then a recovering Kato persuades him to another one. Terasaki also can't resist getting a haircut at her doorstep. With that, Kayashima is back to using his skills and is pleased about it. He happily cuts Hitano's hair too, even though he's closed up shop. As he works, they talk about Shirahama's determination to make a fire without a source, wanting to be more useful after the Kato incident. Kayashima suggests Hitano should tell him to rest. He becomes shy when she compliments his work. Shirahama persists, rubbing a stick into a rock, but he's not getting anywhere. He and Hitano hear the trap go off, but they've caught a kid who immediately takes off running. They follow him to a river they've not seen before. Kayashima tries to follow, but he's too far behind, alerted after the fact. At the station, there's no information for the families of the missing. Tatsuya loses it over the ineptitude. In total, 133 people are missing in an unprecedented accident. Everyone is traumatized, including Shirahama's previously injured colleague who's there too. The kid asks Shirahama to wait, and they agree. Meanwhile, Shirahama keeps trying to make a fire. Eventually, Kayashima catches up and hears Shirahama talking about his mistakes. He comforts him, saying it was an accident. Hitano expresses thanks to Shirahama for bringing everyone together. Shirahama finds it hard to accept the compliments and explains what happened to his colleague. It was his fault, and his colleague got injured trying to fix the mistake. Shirahama didn't report it later, making him feel even more guilty. Hitano suggests they forget the past and trust the future. They're there for a reason, right? Kayashima agrees, and using his skilled hands, they finally get a flame going. The kid from before comes back and leads them to what seems like a village. But it's Car 6, and they seem to have things figured out. They know that the rest are from Car 5. Kayashima, Shirahama, and Hitano find themselves back in the Car 6 village. They claim to have faced many troubles but work together for the good result you see here. The leader shows them all they've built, even a bathtub, raising eyebrows. They meet some of the illustrious members, including the guy who may have stabbed Kato. Kayashima seizes on that and they immediately apologize, saying they thought Kato might have been dangerous. The leader quickly de-escalates things and Car 5 introduces themselves. But it's anything but smooth as guys from the other car, Hitano. Shirahama claims she's his fiancée to stop any issues, then she changes the subject to something they had mentioned, future inhabitants. They claim to have evidence that they're in the future and a determination to get back. In the morning at Car 5, Rina shares her backstory, explaining her built-up anger stemming from family circumstances and dissatisfying jobs. So, she's decided to live for the present and is disappointed when Shirahama mentions the possibility of returning to the present. She and Kayashima also agree that there may be something shady about Car 6. Kato, the previously injured party, thinks they should at least listen to Car 6's leader, Yamamoto, on this. A group ventures out with Yamamoto to see his evidence, a grounded yacht where he's been able to make a connection, though not a very clear one. Over the radio, they confirm it's the year 2060. 3 years after they left, a meteor hit Earth, triggering an impact winter in Japan, North and South America, and Australia. Meanwhile, in the present, Tatsuya visits Kayashima's boss and friend as she had been calling him nonstop. How's he doing? As an ex-con whose family disappeared, he's not able to get a job. Without looking back, she instantly hires him to work for her at the salon. After hearing that Earth's disaster is man-made, Yamamoto comes to believe that their escape was fated for them to go back and warn those in the present so they can save their loved ones. He proposes that they share information and go home together. Shirahama starts thinking of their mission as saving everyone, but Kayashima is still doubtful. He believes that even if they make it back, people will go back to their normal lives and never stay connected. However, he doesn't really think they'll make it back. That night, Kayashima dreams of Hitano visiting the salon for a haircut and inviting him to join them at the restaurant, just like they had discussed. He wakes up to everyone building a bath and appreciating all he's done for the group so far. Hitano tries to get Rina involved, but she doesn't want to ruin her nails. Instead, she ends up painting Hitano's nails while they chat. During their conversation, Tanaka abruptly enters the car, startling everyone just to claim his newspaper. He tells his stick puppet, Mippo, that he wasn't able to get anything else. Working together, Kayashima teases Shirahama for noticing Hitano's nails, his fiancée. He laughs at their embarrassed reactions, but Hitano sets things straight by teasing him about the girl she saw dropping him off at the train station that day. In the present, she explains to Tatsuya that she and Kayashima aren't a couple and he has closed himself off emotionally. While she's away attending to a customer, Tatsuya steals money from her wallet. They all cheer for the bath they built, each person taking a turn to relax and reflect. Shirahama talks to Kayashima about why he believes he was saved twice, to save the people who saved him, including a woman. Kayashima agrees, acknowledging there are people to save, like his brother, but he doesn't think it will happen. Hitano overhears the entire conversation, feeling upset to learn that Shirahama has someone he likes. Kayashima tells her she's being foolish since that girl is in the past. However sarcastic he is, she appreciates his attempt to console her. Terasaki overhears this and later accuses Kayashima of falling in love with Hitano. In Car 6, Tanaka trades information about Car 5 for supplies, revealing that they're burying glowing rocks. The next day, Rina catches people from Car 6 searching for the rocks with the intention of using them to get back home. Later, Rina decides she wants to talk to Yamamoto, but Hitano tries to stop her from going alone. Rina doesn't really want to go back, at least here, she feels special just for living. They come across what seems to be a buried head and get caught by people from Car 6. Rina runs away, but Hitano is caught and Kayashima takes off running, with Shirahama following closely. Hitano is cornered and jumps from a ledge. People from Car 6 are chasing Hitano through the woods and Kayashima and Shirahama run to help. Yonezawa reflects on all the things that have happened since Kato was stabbed. It's like a manga, but real. Terasaki suggests they make some weapons, just in case. Hitano successfully makes the jump and Car 6 continues to give chase. Meanwhile, Kayashima and Shirahama search Car 6. They don't find Hitano, but they do find blood. Yamamoto weaves a story about a stabber in their train car who threatened other passengers. He portrays himself as the hero who defended everyone but stabbed the guy with his own knife in the scuffle. Kayashima isn't buying it, but they ask him to help find Hitano. Car 5 reacts strongly to the possibility of Hitano being taken, ready for a confrontation, but Kayashima stays calm for once, suggesting they focus on finding Hitano first. They head back out to search while others work on weapons and defenses. After a disagreement with Rina, Yonezawa reflects on his failures. Hitano hides in the yacht as Yamamoto enters to make his regular SOS radio call. While he fakes it, she notices the wires are cut and, unfortunately, he spots her. Here stands another passenger who's content to have disappeared from his previous life, especially with his company going bankrupt. She questions whether the story of what happened in the past is a lie too, but he presents a log from the yacht that confirms it. They disagree about revealing the truth, and he ties her up in the ship's hold. A woman from Car 6 brings her water, guiltily keeping the secret to protect her son. Tied and with time to think, Hatano recalls something she'd rather not return to. Nevertheless, she shouts for help. As Kayashima and Shirahama make a fire by the stream to keep watch, Kayashima assures that Hatano will be fine. She's super strong and can eat bugs and sleep anywhere. Now Shirahama knows too. He hadn't noticed any of those things. The next morning, Car 5 traps a Car 6 guy who was lurking around and contemplates what to do if they attack in force. Terasaki considers Plan B, finding another place if Car 5 isn't safe. The conductor goes with her. Some from Car 6 surge to retrieve their guy from Car 5, and Yamamoto sends others to stop them while he heads toward Hatano. However, the person in charge of stopping the others redirects them to collect weapons, contradicting Yamamoto's orders. Car 5 traps someone else in their rigging, throwing rocks to send them running. It becomes a brawl with sticks and fists, to which Kayashima and Shirahama return. They're fighting for resources now, and everyone is jumping in. Car 5 is completely outnumbered, getting beaten at every turn. Tanaka watches the whole thing, enjoying the spectacle. Finally, Yonezawa climbs to the top of the train, shouting for everyone to stop. Is this the future you want? One of the Car 6 guys grabs a duffel bag from Car 5, running just as Hatano appears, preventing a kid from getting knocked down by the escaping ruffian. Hatano shouts that Yamamoto can't call for help and there's no rescue coming. Yamamoto admits he lied to give hope because he wanted to be in charge. Kayashima points out the deception. Yamamoto hands over the ship's journal to Shirahama. As they start rebuilding, Kato tells Yonezawa that he was cool for stepping in. Hatano apologizes to Kayashima for causing trouble. He praises her, leaving her speechless, and she bursts into tears. Shirahama notes to Kayashima that Hatano is truly strong. Kayashima explains to the dummy that he's the thing that keeps her going, and he hasn't yet noticed. Professor Hasumi from the astrophysics department receives information that Kato from their department is one of the missing individuals from the train incident. He starts investigating the phenomenon. We return to Professor Hasumi's office, where he contemplates the possibilities of time travel. In the future, some passengers from Car 6 request a move to Car 5. After Yamamoto explains his lie and disappears, the more aggressive passengers in Car 6 are left to their own devices. Yonezawa narrates why they'd want to make the move. They have the cool Shirahama and the cute Yonezawa, of course. Kayashima wonders why he's not part of the story. High schooler Kazuma chuckles at the interaction, clearly looking up to Kayashima too. Kazuma stumbles over his dictionary, delving into his high school life and getting to know Koharu, who could always see through him. Meanwhile, Shirahama shares Yamamoto's notes, and they start thinking about what the glowing rocks could do. Excitement spreads among the group when Akashi brings news of a hot spring and a source of salt. Unfortunately, Car 6 has claimed the land. To avoid risking Shirahama after the previous brawl, Kayashima volunteers to speak to Car 6. Despite concerns, he heads out alone, but Yonezawa and Kato insist on following to keep his hothead in check. They are shocked to hear him ask to join the other car, offering his scissor set as an inducement. Meanwhile, Tanaka talks to his puppet Meepo, noticing the beginnings of a storm. While Car 5 rebuilds and expands with new members, Shirahama and Hatano chat. She casually mentions the waitress he had noticed. Before they get very far, Yonezawa shows up seeking Shirahama. Car 6 arrives with gifts and agrees to allow Car 5 to take salt from the hot spring freely. In a flashback, Kayashima bets his scissors to secure fishing and salt claiming rights for Car 5. While Yonezawa and Kato share the news, Kayashima is out fishing. Shirahama finds him at the waterfall, questioning why he left. Was it to make a way for him and Hatano? Shirahama believes he will return to the girl waiting for him. On the other hand, Kayashima hopes his brother isn't lingering around waiting for him. Meanwhile, Tatsuya has been caught stealing from his boss's wallet. She remains calm, asking about his intentions, perhaps to buy information about his brother. She explains the futility of such an endeavor. Kayashima comes back to Car 5 with Shirahama, but he stays outside. Shirahama shares news about the glowing rocks and mentions that someone from Car 6 thought they came from a meteorite. They discuss the aurora as a possible sign of a disturbance in the magnetosphere, with Kato drawing a picture to help explain. Meanwhile, back at home, Professor Hasumi is figuring out similar ideas, connecting the phenomenon to a potential black hole created by a supernova. He suggests that the tunnel might act like a wormhole. In Car 5, Kato remembers Professor Hasumi's theory about a wormhole allowing time travel. Kazuma quickly catches on, demonstrating the concept with a simple explanation. The idea of going home brings mixed feelings. Some are ready for a new beginning, while Rina points out the impending disaster, stating that they are the chosen ones given the chance to survive. However, uncertainties persist and they aren't sure if they are still on the same planet. The next day, various groups set out to explore their surroundings. Kazuma, eager to return to normal life, receives unexpected news from Koharu. She's pregnant. Shirahama follows his map and unearths what he believes to be the bicycle belonging to his girl. As a storm begins to intensify, a distressed Kazuma confides in Kayashima. Hatano joins them in the search for Koharu, but she injures her foot, prompting her and Kayashima to seek shelter. Hatano encourages Kayashima to open up and he admits his fear of people always leaving. In a comforting moment, Hatano hugs him. Amidst the storm, everyone seeks refuge in Car 5, including Tanaka. However, as he opens the rear door, Mippo, his puppet, is swept from his pocket into a vortex. The vortex that swallows Mippo, and everyone believes they've found the wormhole. However, it unexpectedly shrinks and disappears before their eyes. On the other side, Mippo lands on the platform. As the rain subsides, Kayashima and Hatano locate Koharu and bring her back to Car 5. Koharu reveals she's pregnant, prompting Rina to highlight the potential risks. Undeterred, Shirahama recommits to ensuring everyone's safe return. Inside the train, Kato and Yonezawa express excitement about the wormhole, noting it has always been there but was reopened by the storm. This suggests the possibility of it opening again. Shirahama brings glowing rocks from Car 6 to help manage the wormhole. In the present, Professor Hasumi pursues a similar idea, instructing his team to find meteorites to ignite them through a power line. In the forest, Yonezawa finds a mostly buried power line. Kato explains how this line can help start the wormhole if they manage to get it running. The team starts digging their way through the forest to follow the power line. Meanwhile, the debate about leaving or staying intensifies. Some people feel that the certainty of their current existence, even if challenging, seems safer than venturing into a wormhole. Kato introduces the idea of parallel worlds. If some stay behind while others change the future in the present, separate parallel existences will form, never coming together. Kayashima thinks about staying behind to make sure life continues in some way. Shirahama tries to convince him that they can change the future if they return together. The group follows the power cable to the beach and digs into the power station. They get it working and everyone celebrates the possibility of going home just as another storm comes in. They all pitch in to prepare the train for the journey through the wormhole. People think about whether going back is the right thing to do. Yonezawa brings supplies to Tanaka, who chooses to stay behind. Meanwhile, at home, Tatsuya, having heard the scientists talk, looks for glowing rocks to bring his brother back. As the storm approaches, the power grid is set and people make their final choices. Hatano tries to convince Kayashima to return home, but he sends them off with a smile, asking Shirahama to look after his brother. Shirahama explodes at him, accusing him of being too scared to face the future. He finally succeeds in convincing Kayashima to return and they race back to the car where the wormhole is already growing. There's a panic as some others try to stay behind or are stuck in indecision. Kayashima finally gets everyone believing in Shirahama and onto the train, even Koharu and Rina. But some uninvited Car 6 passengers push Kayashima out of the way, diving for the door as the wormhole begins to cover the train. It's Tanaka that helps get him aboard and closes the doors behind him as the wormhole sucks them away with the hope of changing the future. They land on a rail bridge on May 1st, 2026. Not only have the passengers lost 3 years, but they are now in the year of the disaster. The carload is immediately taken for health checks and debriefings. As each person tells their version, they note the impending disaster, sharing whatever proof they have from the future. Finally, they meet their families and Kayashima can barely hold it together. At home, Kayashima meets Tatsuya's girlfriend, who now lives with him in their home. He then heads to the salon to practice his skill but finds his hands aren't as dexterous. Terasaki considers who she can talk to about the impending disaster but isn't getting very far. Her husband has a friend in government who may listen. While Shirahama brings more evidence to the police who've been working on the case, they don't believe him. Additionally, they're still investigating the knife murderer from Car 6. At the university, Professor Hasumi considers the evidence, including the corroborating testimonials of the passengers. Meanwhile, some of Car 5 gather to share their progress on the disaster, all finding more closed doors. As they chat, Kazuma and Kohara confide they're getting married, but their parents aren't too happy. They'd wanted things to go back to normal. In the outside world, the press jumps on the fact that Kayashima's brother is a criminal as a means to discredit his story. But he's got bigger worries, like the fact he can barely hold chopsticks, let alone scissors. Tatsuya says he can support him, but Kayashima won't hear of it. While out with his brother, he misses Hatano, who visits the salon, discovering that the shop owner is not Kayashima's girlfriend. She leaves him a note with the hope of connecting. At the fire station, Shirahama is back in uniform. His injured former colleague is now able to take a few delicate steps, telling him he's better now and Shirahama can move on. Meanwhile, the hot stylist Kayashima continues to bring crowds to the salon, with some people bringing flowers and others trying for a slick new social media story. At home, Terasaki's daughter is worried that people are calling her mother crazy. Kato notes that all of them now have social media profiles with people posting videos about them. This includes Rina, who is confronted by Akashi's wife on video. Hatano confesses she quit her job for the sake of the students. At home, Kayashima's long-absent mother appears on the news, talking about her now-famous son. Kayashima is pushed to the edge as she specifically notes how the three of them got through previous trouble together and how proud she is of him. At a group meeting, Yonezawa shares his visit to Tanaka's daughter. He explained her father's choice to her, and it turns out her childhood nickname was Mippo. She reinforced that Yonezawa has to save the future. As they ponder tactics, Kato thinks about how the plants he brought back can be incontrovertible proof that they were in the future, bringing the group some hope. Afterward, Shirahama and Hatano visit the restaurant like they'd promised. The girl Shirahama admired is wearing someone else's ring. The two talk about happiness, emphasizing the importance of having someone to share both the good and the bad moments. Hatano can't help but worry about Kayashima. Later, Shirahama runs into him and asks about his hand, but Kayashima comments that it looks like his career is finished. As Shirahama tries to convince him to join their group, reminding him of their responsibility to save everyone, Kayashima is spiraling in negativity. He wishes he could go back to the future, regretting that he hadn't left in the first place. Shirahama asks him about Hatano, but he doesn't budge. The next day, Kayashima packs a bag, stating that he'll lay low for a while. Meanwhile, at work, Shirahama responds to a fire emergency. However, at the scene, social media hounds prevent him from carrying out his duties. He gets criticized for pushing a selfie taker out of the way during the fire scene and is subsequently removed from duty. Hatano calls Kayashima and confesses her feelings, but he, feeling broken, tells her he has forgotten about her and doesn't care about anything anymore, including the future. Later, in a bar, Kayashima overhears people talking about Shirahama pushing someone. He shows up at the station to console him. They agree on how much the world sucks, but Kayashima won't let him wallow. At the same time, several unidentified objects are spotted in the sky. Back at the fire station, Kayashima tells an exhausted Shirahama that he can't give up. However, the station chief suggests he take some leave. Meanwhile, Professor Hasumi figures out that the coming unidentified objects will arrive in December, just as the survivors had said. On the subway, Kayashima suddenly realizes he's in car 5. A bottle cap rolls his way, but before he can panic, it's Yonezawa who approaches him and drags him to the group meeting, to everyone's joy. Hatano is there too, asking about his hand. At the police station, they've figured out the Mippo doll has Tanaka's tooth attached to it, providing them with DNA evidence and more pieces of the puzzle. Rina encourages Kayashima to hang out with them, embracing his contrarian nature. However, he suggests they need to focus on helping Shirahama. Yonezawa takes action by uploading a video explaining the impending disaster, quickly gaining 3 million views. Simultaneously, Kato receives confirmation that his plant sample is indeed from the future. Terasaki confirms that she spoke to a former Minister of Defense who acknowledges the meteor threat but urges them to avoid causing panic. The Defense Department is quietly handling the situation. With the end in sight, everyone must decide how they want to live. Shirahama decides to quit the fire department, feeling he can't save anyone. His old friends express belief in him, but they caution that the rest of Japan won't believe in someone who quits. It's something for him to consider. The next day, Yonezawa sends a time capsule to Tanaka, assuring him that everyone is okay and updating him on his daughter's well-being. Meanwhile, at the university, Professor Hasumi works to corroborate the survivors' accounts of the event, while the government emphasizes the need to maintain calm. Later, everyone gathers at the hospital to celebrate the birth of Kohara's newborn. They express gratitude to Shirahama and Kayashima for their efforts in getting them home, acknowledging the happy memories they've shared. Shirahama mentions to Kayashima that a rocket launch in 3 days will confirm their story. Terasaki invites everyone to her friend's bunker in Switzerland for safety, presenting them with another choice to make. Shirahama decides to stay in Tokyo but asks Kayashima to take care of everyone, including Hatano. Each person must make their own decision once again. On the day when everyone is set to meet for the journey to Switzerland, Tatsuya expresses gratitude to Kayashima for the happiness he's found. As he departs with his girlfriend, Hatano waits with the baby, and Kazuma assists Kohara with her suitcase. However, Kayashima makes a call to Hatano, revealing that he has to go elsewhere. While everyone else heads towards the airport, Kayashima approaches Shirahama, acknowledging the countless times he has been saved by him. They are uncertain about what lies ahead. Meanwhile, in the future, Tanaka receives the time capsule. This marks the end of the first season of the series.